Good afternoon and welcome to Africa, a magnificent continent of 1 billion human souls and countless animal ones. You are most welcome. You're with WildEarth.tv from Cape Agulhas in the south to Tangiers in the north, from the West Gold Coast in the west of Africa to the Horn of Africa. You are welcome. We are sitting here in marvelous South Africa, to my mind the most beautiful country in Africa and indeed the world. And you're sitting also within the Greater Kruger National Park, part of the Greater Limpopo Transfrontier Park, quite a complicated agglomeration of conservation areas. But what the most important thing about it is, of course, that it is 8 million acres or 3.5 million hectares of unfettered, wonderful wilderness land. And we're sitting on about 1,500 hectares of that, a little spot called Djuma, which is all around us here. And then off to the west, 600 hectares of land called Arathusa. And my name is James Henry, in case you were wondering. It's not particularly relevant, but behind me is Andrew. Andrew, wave your thumb. There we go. And Andrew is on camera today, and he has a beard almost as luxuriant as the buffalo that you saw when we started today. On the other vehicle we have Jamie, and she's being filmed by the inimitable Jean Drey, who thankfully has replaced his pants from last evening, which was slightly disturbing. And we'd love to hear from you, so please don't forget that. If you're a new viewer, or perhaps you're an old viewer who doesn't like to send through questions or is a bit nervous of it, we do love to hear from you. Any comments, any questions you have, please feel free to send them through. If you're on the tweet, it's #Safari Live, or if you're on the email, questions@wildearth.tv. Okay, our plan this afternoon is to head across to the east. We did do that this morning. Didn't come up with a huge amount with the heartbeat. Lots of beautiful trees and lots of beautiful scenery this morning, but we're hopefully going to find something a little more active this afternoon. Jamie's gone off towards the west. She's checking up on Shadow and Cub, and Shadow, well, she'll tell you all about that. I'm not going to tell you about that. She's also going to check up on Arathusa and see what's going there. The weather is a sort of warmish 23 degrees Celsius or 74 degrees Fahrenheit for those still languishing in the days of the imperial system. Sorry for that. And so it's nice. I mean, it's very pleasant out here. There was a slightly chilly wind this morning, but the wind, it's turned into quite a nice breeze. So while it's probably quite chilly on the highlands of the Highveld, it's very pleasant down here in the Lowveld as we head out of the winter time. Just something to look out for as we go forward is the migrant birds that are going to start arriving back now. We've had the first yellow-billed kites down in Natal. I think they're going to arrive here soon. And also the Wahlberg's eagles, another lovely one to keep an eye out for. And Andrew, if you can you see this Birchall starling over there?
In the tree on the ground?
Yes, in the tree. There's another one on the ground, either one. Yep. So the Birchall starling is an interesting one for migrants. It's not a migrant at all. They're four monogamous pairs that go and live in tree holes that are excavated by woodpeckers or barbets. But interestingly, they are parasitized by a number of cuckoo species, including the what's it called again? I've lost my mind. One of the cuckoos and honey guides. They also like to parasitize the nests of the Birchall's starling. So it's a great spotted cuckoo. There we go, I've got my mind straight. And the greater honey guide, they like to parasitize those nests, so they don't make their own nests. So the Birchall starling is going to have to keep an eye out for those cuckoos as they come back into this area for the summertime. Right, without further ado, let us away into the wilds of the Greater Kruger National Park. You're most welcome. And while I sit here, I'm going to replug myself in. And the reason I need to replug myself in, of course, is because we are not alone on our drive. Oh no. Now, in the final control room, where most of the intellectual stuff happens, we have Tara Dales and Louise, and they are looking after all of the technical stuff, along with Eugene and Stefan. We might just stop next to this fellow. Hello, old boy. Now, These two buffalo have rather managed to keep themselves in pretty good condition. Their fur is, well, the one who's just walked away, his fur is not great. But that one has got a rather luxuriant salon quality pelage as he chews his cud. These will be old bulls, and they're no longer really sort of mating. Although if some of the herds come through here, they may join up for a little while, but mostly they'll be on their own. You can see his horns are possibly not quite what they once were. They've been worn away by rubbing and by fighting, and a life well lived for a buffalo to have gotten to this age. And unfortunately, I suppose they will eventually fall prey to lions, because not much dies of old age out here. We've had a few questions about old age in the last few days, and whether they survive to die of old age or whether they get preyed upon. And I'm afraid most animals do not die of old age in the wilds out here. Andrew, I know this is going to be slightly crude. Won't you go to his bottom? And a little bit down from there. Now that's his scrotum there. Now on a full breeding bull, on a big dominant bull in a herd, that scrotum will hang quite low down, but next to his hocks, which look like sort of backward facing knees. That's the joint I mean there. And the reason for that is that, you know, he's a breeding bull. These ones, their testicles tend to atrophy slightly because their opportunity to mate is so much reduced. And so they don't really need to expend the energy. Oh dear, shame, he's exhausted. Don't die on us right now. He's just going to lie down and chew his cud for a while. So because their breeding opportunities are so reduced, it's a waste of energy to maintain that part of the body which is no longer used. He doesn't look particularly pleased with what I've just told you about him. Sorry, old boy. It'll happen to the best of us. And just like a cow, exactly like a cow, they'll lie down in the shade and chew the cud. And that means that they're regurgitating food from the forestomach. They've got a four-chambered stomach, and the front stomach they'll regurgitate food from into the mouth and grind it up nicely, so that they can then re-swallow it into the second, third and fourth chambers of the stomach, and in so doing pull out most of the protein and carbohydrates from the very dry winter vegetation that they're eating now. You can also hear the oxpecker's alarm calling. Psh, psh, psh. That's a youngster that there is there. He's a red-billed oxpecker with a grey bill, and that just means he's a very young one. There he sits. Just before you came live, well, how many did we have, Andrew?
About 7 or 8.
7 or 8 on the luxuriant pelage of this fellow here. So it's a wonderful sort of warm, comfortable afternoon. The light is a little bit washed out, but that won't last for long. It'll soften quite nicely a little bit later. And there's a very nice sort of atmosphere that's flowing around the bush right now. It feels very calm and very peaceful. And so if you're a little bit stressed and perhaps you're at work or you've had a stressful day and you've just sat down, I hope that you'll be able to gather some of the peace that Andrew and I are both feeling from the wilderness today. It really is rather wonderful. Andrew looks almost asleep. Right, on we go. I think our first port of call is going to be a water hole called Twin Dams. It is not a particularly impressive sight. It's hardly going to rival the Great Lakes of Michigan. But we're going to go and have a look at it anyway to see if there's anything there having a drink. We had some wonderful fish eagle sightings there the other day. Not to lose all the equipment, Andrew. bird here, and I'll tell you why. We're going to have a look at him. Hiding there. You see him? So he's not a particularly unusual bird, a very pretty bird, the yellow-billed hornbill. And the reason I'm showing him to you is that Andrew has struck up a relationship with one of these fellows. What do you call him, Andrew?
He's Billy.
Billy. This is clearly not Billy, because he took fright at Andrew. And they become very confiding, the hornbills, just like starlings do. And if they live around human habitation, they very quickly lose their fear of human beings. So you can get some wonderful photographs, unlike this one, which is now hiding in the thickest tambuti tree on the reserve. So, sorry about that. That's the yellow-billed hornbill. Very, what we say, Catholic diet, which means they'll eat just about anything that's smaller than them. Seeds, fruit, flesh. I've seen them eating chameleons once. Very bumpy roads. Now I just want to give you a little bit of a recap, perhaps for some of you who've been watching for a while and you're wondering about the lions, because there's a great upheaval in the lion population of the area at the moment. Andrew, if I look like I'm going to drive off the road, will you indicate that by screaming loudly? We didn't see any lions this morning, and in fact we hardly saw anything this morning. But the 5 Birmingham males, which are 5 males that are intent on trying to take over this territory, were found just south of us, and they'd scavenged a carcass from the Styx Pride, and the 2 dominant males had skedaddled off to the east. Now whether they were running or going off to mark some territory, I don't know, but there's definitely great upheaval. So that's what's going on with the lions.
There's an elephant over there, right?
Ah, Andrew has spotted an elephant. Well done, Andrew. There we go, beautiful. Right, I'm just going to engage in a more appropriate gear. Can you smell him? Can you smell him? Oh, now I understand. Hang on a second. Andrew, we will go into the sighting. I didn't plug Tara in properly, that's why I can't hear her. Right, I've got her now. Beautiful elephant there. Looks like a bull on his own. It's quite nice. Did you? Yeah. Okay, let's just get a picture of him, and then what I want to do is just listen quite carefully to who is around. Beautiful bull. And he's just very comfortably waiting out the sort of hot part of the day. And I wonder if this isn't that musk bull that we've been seeing. I can't smell him. A musk bull you can smell quite easily. There are definitely some more through there coming, and you can see him listening for them. That's why his ears have come out like that. Alright, I think we should maybe try and move a little bit closer, but let's wait a little bit. There we go, come on old boy. So it is very dry, and you can see the vegetation is pretty grey, around the trees, and then very lovely golden brown around the grass. And Mavis, with regarding the elephants and the buffalo, you've made an excellent point that they probably need more water in the dry season because the grass is so dry. And Mavis, you're absolutely bang on correct. A buffalo has an extremely efficient, a very efficient digestive system that is perfectly functional in the winter as long as they can get enough to drink. And so yes, you're absolutely right, that is a massive elephant coming through there. That is a big fellow. That's wonderful. Let's just watch and see what happens. The other one was definitely a little bit nervous. So Mavis, absolutely, they do need to have more water in the dry season, just so that they can accommodate the very dry food. Is that a bull? It is a bull. Yeah, there are definitely two bulls here. We're just going to nip quickly across to Jamie to have a look, a quick update from her, and she's got a small carnivore from this enormous herbivore, and we'll get into a better position while you're away, and I'll see you now with these two magnificent bulls.
So, good afternoon everyone, and welcome to the Sunset Safari. For those of you who don't know, my name is Jamie and I have Jean-Andre on camera with me this afternoon, and we've started off well with that wonderful buffalo and then elephant sighting with James, and we are just sitting enjoying the company of a colony of dwarf mongoose, which are definitely some of my favorite little animals to watch. And they've been just busy foraging at their den, which is this. There's a termite mound off to my left, which they've been busy scratching around in, and they've now all sort of dispersed off in various directions, busy foraging and digging, trying to dig up little scorpions and other insects. And unfortunately, most of them seem to have scurried further afield, although there is one still digging just down there to my right, which I will shift and move for. But they're wonderful little animals to sit with, and so very entertaining. Be able to get that little one. Here they are, tucked away in the thicket there, but this one's been very busy digging. I think he's after a scorpion or something like that, or a grub that's buried underground. The smallest predator on the Sabi Sands. And it is great fun to sit in silence and just listen to their various contact calls and squeaks, although most of them have moved off now. And there was one very high-pitched squeal there. Might have been a little bit too high for the microphone to pick up, but they are calling to each other every now and again. And I think this one might have found something interesting. So they haven't been calling to each other very much right now, but they were a little bit earlier. And you could hear the different tones in terms of just their little contact calls to each other, just letting each mongoose know where they are. And then when we shifted slightly, or at least I shifted slightly in my seat, and one of them got a fright, and the squeak that they made was very different, very high-pitched warning call. And at every single mongoose that we could see, and I've counted about 8 of them, they've all kind of dispersed off now, but every single mongoose reacted almost instantaneously, instant tension, looking around to see where the threat was coming from. And you'll see they have different types of alarm calls. So if there had been a bird of prey flying over that one of them had spotted, then they would have made a specific type of sound that then would cause every member of the colony to just look up into the sky and see exactly where that threat was coming from, and then very possibly either hide in the thicker bushes or dash towards the safety of the burrow. This little one is still ferociously digging away, but they have been very, very entertaining. And just while we're thinking about alarm calls, if there had been something like a snake in the area, then there's a high possibility that one would have called and they all would have come rushing to try and mob that snake and chase it away. So each alarm call and each sound that they make will be invoke a different response from each of the mongoose. So they do have different alarm calls for different predators. And I know there's a lot of studies going into the variations of the alarm calls and how they all work and how they all communicate. And I'd be very curious to know, on the subject of alarm calls, if there is variation between, say, the dwarf mongoose here and dwarf mongoose maybe 200 kilometers to the west of us in a different area. Because I know that birds have different accents. If you listen to bird calls of the same species of bird, you can definitely pick up a different pitch and a different tone of those animals calling. So I wonder if it works the same way with mongoose, anything from the mongoose to the meerkats to the monkeys. I'd love to know if there's some kind of almost like an accent, because birds definitely do have accents if they are from different areas. I've heard some of the widely distributed bird species, something like a batis or a grey go-away bird, when they do call in different areas, they do have a different accent. So I wonder if it works the same way with these guys. Still foraging away. Don't know if he's managed to find what he was looking for, he or she. Very difficult to tell with the mongoose. So guys, just so that you know my mission plan for this afternoon, we are going to go and search for Shadow and Sindile. Now I know that Brent was hot on their tails this morning from where James left them yesterday afternoon, so we're going to go searching, see if maybe if they've made a kill, and I do suspect that they are somewhere in this block here, so I might be hopping out to do some walking. But in the meantime, I'm going to send you back to James and his from one of the smallest animals on the Sabi Sands to one of the largest. I'll send you back to his large pachyderms, and I will catch up with you a little bit later.
Hi everybody, welcome back to Jiga, where the scent of what was called green penis syndrome, lovely name that, Andrew, is starting to waft over the clearing here, and we've got 3 bulls, one monster in there, and by monster I just mean enormously sized one sort of medium-sized one lurking behind this worry bush, and another one just across the road, and they're sort of threatening to come out and have a drink. So I'm hoping they're going to go towards Gowrie Dam and have a bit of a drink, which would be wonderful, or at least throw some mud on themselves. Now, green penis syndrome is a symptom of something called must, and must, of course, is the heightened time of testosterone that elephant bulls have when they're ready to mate. Here we go. And this big chap's only got 1 tusk. Jeepers, he's big, he's huge. That's 6 tons of magnificence. Oh, look at that. just looking at the trunk there. Watch how his trunk is there. He's just trying to smell us. He's watching us. He's not watching the other elephants. He's definitely watching us. And his trunk, as you can see, is very creased. And Mao Su, lovely question you have. Is that trunk able to extend? Absolutely. It's like a concertina. So it will be able to go in and out depending on how it'll stretch right onto the ground if he wants it to, or pull right off the ground if he doesn't want it to. What's interesting is that the young bulls or young calves are unable to do that too well because they just don't have the coordination, and the calves don't want to be able to touch the ground with their trunks because they tend to stand all over them. Once they've got the coordination, they can stretch them out and pull them back. Lovely question and good observation. Now, what's interesting here, there's another bull there. I'm just going to quickly show him to you. And he's big, but he's nothing like the size of that other chap with the one tusk. And quite often what happens with elephants is that you have an enormous bull who's got a couple of what we call askaris, or young bulls who are sort of learning the ropes. And I'd put that big bull at least 40 to 45 years. And I'd say, this fellow, he's not small, this fellow who's looking at us with disdain. I'd say he's probably about 30, maybe 25. He's also big though. But I think if you see him standing next to the huge one, you'll see that there's a marked difference. They've disappeared into some thick stuff there, which is a bit disappointing. I hope they're going to come out and have a drink. Right, tracking him rightly, Sandra. It's the best way. Now they're going down towards the thicker drainage line where it's probably a little bit cooler for them, and there's also a bit more in the way of green vegetation to eat. So we'll follow them down as far as we can go, but it does get very thick in there, I'm afraid. There's another one. Just spotted him through the trees. You won't see him. I just saw his legs moving. Let's go and have a look. Beautiful elephants. Yes, you did spot them, Andrew. Well done.
Let's take that one.
Oh. But Andrew was trying to get himself some credit there. You can smell that green secretion that they make now. It does look like there might be a herd here. Now, we're not going to get a great view from here. I think we're going to go round to the Gowrie Dam wall and see if we don't get a better view from there. Now elephants, as you may have noticed, I mean, they're obviously at various sizes, and you saw how the younger, or the big one there, was substantially bigger than the smallest one. And elephants grow their whole lives. They never stop growing. They do slow down growing, but they never stop growing. And so the age of elephants is pretty easy to tell, or not the relative age, simply by size. And Robin in Westminster, you want to know, because of the hips showing on that one that we were following there, to a sort of slightly shall we say, lower condition, is it possible that he's older than the big one? No, definitely not. I think what's maybe affecting his nutritional status, so his hips sticking out a bit, is the fact that he has probably just been in must or something like that, and they do lose condition when they're in must, because all they think about is sex. and because of that they forget to eat. It's just like the impala when they're in the rut. They don't eat. All they do is chase girls all day long and they forget to eat. And that's pretty much, I think, what a musk bull does, and that's probably why they're so thin. Andrew, stop messing around in the back there. There is no accounting for some people. Andrew was putting some lip gloss on his lips. Acting like he doesn't have a care in the world, which I suppose he doesn't. We do have the best job in the world. There's some lovely elephants just below the dam wall there. Oh, look at this. This is special. Andrew, I think we're going to go to those ones there, if that's all right. Look at that. Don't worry, fellows. We are of no threat to you. Oh, very cross. So while we're looking at these, what look to be 3 youngsters just feeding on some reeds, there'll be some probably older ones and females further in there. We'll just have a little chat about that tusk that's missing. So you saw the big bull there with the missing tusk, and Judith, you want to know basically, does that tusk grow back, or is it like a tooth? Well, it is a tooth. It's the incisor tooth. And it can break off at the root, it can break off halfway, it just depends. That one looks like it's completely gone. Now, I suspect that would have been very painful and probably the result of some sort of infection that happened. And the tooth goes right up into the skull, and the nerve is like a huge piece of calamari that stretches down into the tooth. And I suspect he probably had an infection there somehow, some sort of abscess. Oh, look. And that abscess would have resulted in him losing the tusk. And Jamie, you want to know basically, would he have lost it in a fight or something like that? I think it's more likely that it was an infection, and he probably then broke it while trying, maybe in a fight, but more likely just using it on his everyday ramblings, trying to pick bark off trees and that sort of thing. You know, elephants use their tusks extensively while feeding, and if there's a weakness or an infection, they can break their tusks like that. So I suspect that's more likely than during a fight. Andrew, are you happy with this position, or do you want a look down there?
This is good, eh?
This is good, okay. And you can just see that one there eating the last of the reeds, the last of the greenness that there happens to be. The elephants will spend more and more time along these drainage lines as the dry season progresses. This is very special. So these look to me like some youngsters, probably teenagers. Well, except the one in the middle there is not a teenager at all. He's a youngster hanging with the teenagers. And you can see they feel very comfortable away from the matriarch and the older females who will be around here. We can hear them all, and you've seen a few of them knocking around in the bush. Very peaceful, lovely scene. And in the background I can hear some blacksmith lapwings calling. just adding to the sort of soporific nature of the afternoon. Ooh. Now that tree that's being molested there is called Acacia gerardii, and you can see it quite nicely there because of the red. It's called the red thorn. It used to be called the red thorn. It's now called the broken thorn. But you saw that little bit of red there on the top, and that's why it's called the red thorn. And Brian and I the other day were driving through, and we were tasting different pieces of acacia bark. And the red thorn has a really nice sweet taste. So I think that's why it's being hammered to pieces there. And the bark is what's being selected for. Yeah, there's the big bull. Can you see him there, Andrew? He's just coming through at the back there. There he is. Wonderful to see just the grey shape moving through the trees with astonishing stealth. And just while we look at that bull, big bull coming through from the back there with his one heavy tusk. Gail in Rhode Island, a very nice question about why, or would he have to compensate for the fact that he only has one on one side. He's a relatively big tusker, and I'd say his tusks probably weigh close on 15 kilograms. That's quite heavy. So I imagine, Gail, that there would be an element of compensation required from his neck muscles. He's not certainly one of the biggest tuskers. I mean, they can get up to almost 60 kilograms in some of them. I think that's the record tusk. So you can imagine if one broke off, then absolutely it would be a big difference. But yeah, I don't think it'll make a huge difference. I'm sure there's a small amount of compensation that takes place, though. There are a lot of elephants here. This is just wonderful. You can see the drongo just picking up the odd grub unearthed by the reed that's been pulled out of the ground unceremoniously. This is such a privilege. Such a privilege. And you look in front there. Here come the boys. They're just over there. They're talking to each other. I can hear them making that little grumbling noise. They're much less communicative than the females and the calves, apparently. Because he's got absolutely enormous tusks, and he's got two. Where's the one-tusked one? Oh, look at the two of them fighting with each other now. Everything's gone quiet now. You see, after that little fight that they were having, everything went sort of silent. And I think we are not affecting them. I think the presence of those big bulls at the back there definitely upset the balance in some way. And those bulls are standing there almost like they're shy to approach the girls. I'm sure that's not what it is, but that's what it looks like to me. And so while we wait for this to play out, interesting question from James in Kansas. You want to know were there any other elephant species found in this area? James, I don't think so. I don't think elephants specifically. Certainly a number of mega herbivores, and as you mentioned, like mastodons. But I don't think any other elephant species around here specifically. There is, of course, the forest elephant, which is a much smaller version of the African elephant or savanna elephant. And there's still a lot of dispute as to whether he's actually its own species. So that's Loxodonta cycloides versus Loxodonta africana. Here comes some bulls. I don't know where that one tusked fellow is. Now they are looking at us quite carefully. Wondering what we're doing, I'm sure. There's one tusk there, Andrew, right there. Look at him, he's making friends. That's quite sweet, actually. You see him well enough?
Yeah.
He's feeding there, and he just touched that looks like a young bull. He just touched him on the forehead and carried on eating. That's quite nice to see. And we've had a lot of questions of late about fathers and about the role of males in society. And I've made quite a lot of mention about how we like to do that because of our sort of human way of dealing with families and that sort of thing. And it's always nice to see when a big adult male like that takes the time out to sort of just pay a bit of attention to a youngster. Look at that. That is a magnificent bull behind there. I wonder if he's as big. What do you think, Andrew? As big as the one tusker? Not quite.
Nearly.
Nearly. Elephants at this time of year, as you've seen, like to eat in the drainage lines, and they have to come out and get water. And I think these chaps are probably going to try and get some mud as well to cool themselves off a bit, but they're definitely very suspicious of us. And we've got a nice question from Peter in Hackettsville. Peter, I don't know where Hackettsville is. It sounds like quite a countrified, fun place to live. I hope it is. And thank you for watching our show, and thank you for your question. You want to know about elephant graveyards, and do they really exist or not? An elephant graveyard is one of the myths perpetuated by that magnificent film called The Lion King. Elephant graveyards, Peter, do not exist. But there are a number of reasons for why that myth has come up. And one of them is that you very seldom find huge elephant bones anywhere, and there are a number of reasons for that. Firstly, hyenas will eat just about anything, including big elephant bones. Secondly, elephants, when they die, remember their teeth normally wear out, and so they can't eat anymore, and so they tend to move down to where the vegetation is softest, and that's obviously on the rivers. And then, so if they die next to rivers, what generally happens is that their bones sort of dissipate in the water or sink into the sand underneath the rivers. So no, there are no elephant graveyards. The other thing that gives rise, I think, to the myth is that elephants unquestionably mourn their dead, and they come and they pick up, if they find the bones of a dead elephant, they'll pick them up, put them on their heads, and be very silent around the carcass of a dead elephant. And I think that's given rise to the thought that perhaps they like to perhaps they go to a place to die because they have such a cognizance of the death. Now, he's just spotted these two buffalo and taken exception. buffalo has got an enormous wad of mud on his head. Looks a bit lopsided. But the buffalo will not hang about if the elephants decide that they don't wish to have them around. He's coming forward, Andrew. He doesn't know if he wants to attack us or the buffalo. I don't think he's in must. He's certainly not dribbling. The big chap might be. There we go. Now, elephants will normally choose to drink clean water if they can, and there is a pumped water hole quite close to here where they can have clean water. I'm not really sure why they're having this dirty, scummy muck here, but so it is. They may just try it out, of course. They do like to cover themselves in mud. And there you see him just rejecting a trunkful there. Look at the wonderful height difference there. You can see the size difference. I don't think they're very excited by the taste of this water at all. Check this one. They're having a drink now. They can cope with water like this, of course. They don't have to drink totally fresh water all the time. Andrew's just flicking around because, oh, that's a wonderful shot. Sorry, I'm not going to move back, so you are going to get a bit of picture of rope and stuff. But that elephant has just come up a bank that most people would have struggled to come up. And it's such a bizarre, or not bizarre, it's such a misconception that elephants are not agile. That's an unbelievable feat. Well done, Andrew. Well spotted. I think that's also a young bull, you know. It is a young bull, so probably going to join the boys at the bar. One of the buffalo may have skedaddled. Oh no, there he is. And you know, a buffalo is a big animal, but look next to those elephants, he looks like a tiny little pipsqueak. Hey? In the heat of the day, of course, elephants will swim if the water is deep enough. But in this sort of I did see an elephant 2 days ago actually rolling in some mud. So sometimes they go all the way into the water, and other times they just do what that one's doing there, tossing mud over himself. But certainly in the really heat of the day, if the water's deep enough, they have been known to swim quite extensively. That's wonderful. So it's not very hot at the moment. I mean, it's warm, but it's certainly not anything like as hot as it's going to be. Look how their feet mash up the mud and then they can throw it on themselves. Wonderful. Look how small the buffalo look, Andrew. Isn't that amazing? That trunk, apart from being exceptional at flinging mud about themselves and for drinking and for eating and for touching and for smelling, of course, smelling has a very strong connection with taste, of course. And Patty, you want to know in Massachusetts whether that trunk can taste. No, I don't think so, but you know, because it's so closely related to smell, taste, there's probably an element of that, certainly. So a bit like, I don't know, I suppose if you suck something up into your nose, you get a sense of what it would taste like, right? And so I'm sure there's an element of that. And certainly what they do with their trunks, if they're smelling urine or something like that, they touch their trunks in it, and then they put their trunks into their mouths, and that opens up and that sort of opens to a tract of the vemeronasal organ, or, oh, look at that. Buffalo, wake up. Or organ of Jacobson, and that interprets the smell. So I think they're very closely linked, Patty, but whether, I mean, it doesn't have taste buds in its trunk, obviously, but I'm sure it can get an element of flavor from the trunk. Did he touch that buffalo?
Yeah.
Did he?
Yeah, it was tough.
That buffalo is living dangerously. Just beautiful. You know, 2 nights ago, Andrew and I followed a herd for, what, almost 2 hours? Through some very thick bush. And it's so nice to have them out in the open here without having to disturb them. As we watch that trunk go into the mouth deftly and spray water in there, Crystal in California, you want to know if the little ones sometimes bite their trunks, a bit like we bite our tongues as youngsters, because of the lack of coordination. Crystal, I don't know. I don't know if they do. I imagine it's entirely possible. They spend a lot of time putting their trunks in their mouths, so it's quite possible that they sometimes bite their trunks. I haven't managed to see it yet. Well, I'm not sure if I've seen it. I've never read anything about it, but I would imagine it's entirely possible. You hear that? So Crystal, maybe you can do a bit of research and tell us if that actually happens. That would be great. Be careful of your source, but that would be lovely to know. Andrew, quickly, sorry, there's a lilac-breasted roller on the floor there. Can you see him? He's right behind your aerial. I think he's picking up mud though, which is quite interesting. You see him there? There, you got him. Well done. Is he digging for insects, or he's picking up mud, perhaps for a nest? Well tracked, Andrew. Gee whiskers. Don't do that too often. We'll have the BBC taking you off our hands in seconds. So cameo from the lilac-breasted roller. Sorry, and just before we did that, I said to Andrew, did you hear that? And what I heard was a rumble from one of the elephants behind us, perhaps telling the herd it's time to move on. As we look at those muddy bulls coming towards us, a beautiful question from Cameron, aged 5. Firstly, Cameron, do elephants get into trouble for getting muddy? not for getting muddy, I don't think, Cameron, but they definitely get in trouble. You know, their parents can be very strict with them sometimes, especially the little ones. And their sisters and their cousins and their mothers and their aunts tend to give them a good beating every now and again if they're very naughty. So yes, they do get into trouble, but not for spraying mud. So I guess that's one advantage that an elephant has over a human being. They can be as muddy as they like without getting into any kind of trouble. And I think they do like it. I think they absolutely love rolling in the mud. You can see they're coming back to do it again. Thanks for that, Cameron. Good question. Such a peaceful afternoon. The elephants behind us are still just sitting there. Well, not sitting, but they're feeding quietly. And I'm sure that they will come and have a drink at some stage. And I'm just going to back up a bit, if you don't mind. And we can see if we can just get a view of this one-tusked behemoth behind us. Is. Say when. Right.
A little bit back.
A little bit back. It's all right. So there's the big old boy. He looks like quite a gentle fellow, actually, picking gently at a knobthorn tree. And you can see there the use of the tusk. Extremely important. So he clamps the branch between the tusk and the trunk, and then pulls off a few things or breaks the branch off entirely. So if we go back a little bit, there's still a huge amount of activity going on at the waterhole. Get them through there. Is that all right? Through the village weaver nests onto the elephants. Oh. Sorry about my head arrangement there, everybody. I was fiddling with a very kindly given beanie that we were given by some very kind viewers the other day. Velma in Michigan specifically, and Cam, and I just put it on my head without thinking. Look at that. That is wonderful. So you're just asking, do they roll in the mud? Do they like to submerge themselves? Well, there you are. And that thing that you can see in the top of your screen there is a nest of the village weaver, or spotted-backed weaver, as it used to be called. There's a whole colony of them here, and soon they will either be reoccupied or a whole lot more will be made as the spring comes along and the male weaver birds must come and make the nests in order to attract some girls. And that's generally how it works all the way through biology. The males must seduce the women in some way, and in the weaver birds it's through making a home. Let's have a look through at the herd here, where this big bull is interacting rather nicely with the rest of the herd. You can see the huge tusk on that bull, and you can see the tusks on some of the cows standing there, and they're all rather friendlily standing together. And Joanne, while we watch that, look at that big tusk. You want to know, is the size of the tusk related to its related to the age of the elephant only, or is it genetics? And Joanne, it's both. There's definitely a huge genetic element to it, but the tusks also don't stop growing until the elephants die, and so they will always be growing. So they do get bigger and bigger as they get older, but there's a huge variation in genetics and how big the tusks can actually get. And unfortunately, most of the big tuskers of this area were shot out by about 1920. In fact, when the Kruger National Park was proclaimed in 1926, I think there were only about 8 elephants left in the whole area. So it really, the big tuskers, we don't get a huge number of big tuskers in the Kruger anymore, and that's because of the white man and his guns. I got a very nice question from Barbara in Boston. Are elephants really afraid of mice? Barbara, I don't know where it comes. In fact, I do know. We researched it the other day, and it comes from, can I remember? Whoever gave it to us, I wonder if you can perhaps find it again. It comes from a quote, and it's slipped my mind, I'm afraid, but that's where the legend comes from. Somebody made a quote about elephants and mice, and I'll get somebody to have a look and see if they can't find it. But no, elephants are not afraid of mice at all, and it does come from a quote that sort of became accepted as fact. Oh dear. A bit of anger going on there. I think that's two of the youngsters having a bit of a fight. Now, if you'll just excuse me for 1 second, I just need to give a quick update on the radio. So while we're sitting here and the breeze is starting to come up and it is a little bit chilly, and Tony from Holland, I think, you want to know, do elephants cope with cold, and how do they cope with cold? Do they get cold? And you've actually raised quite an interesting topic. Andrew, just watch this fellow come below us here. We'll get back onto this discussion right now. Sorry, they're just talking over each other on the thing right now. Beautiful bull that. So, Tony, the coldness of elephants. It's an important discussion. There is there's a lovely discussion to be had about it, and you can see they don't have fur on them, right? And you find the bigger an animal gets out here, the less fur it tends to have. And that's for a very good reason. The bigger you are, right, the smaller, sorry, let me just get this right in my head. The larger you are, the smaller your mass-specific metabolic rate needs to be, because your surface area, Sorry, apparently I've misunderstood your question, but I'm going to carry on my discussion and move it on to you. Move it on to your actual question. So, elephants have a smaller surface area to body mass ratio than something like a mouse does. So let's continue the mouse and elephant discussion. And basically what happens is, because big animals like this lose heat much slower than smaller animals, they also gain heat much slower. So while if they do get very cold, it's more difficult for them to get warm, a smaller animal will struggle to gain heat and then maintain that heat, and that's why smaller animals tend to be furrier. So I think that's quite an interesting discussion. The other thing, you wanted to know, do they get head colds, as in flu? I've never seen one with a snotty trunk. Have you seen one with a snotty trunk, Andrew?
No.
I don't think they do, Tony. I mean, I'm sure they do get various kinds of infections in the same way we do, and they don't have doctors. There is some evidence to show that they eat medicinal plants, but that's fairly anecdotal. I'm just going to move forward so that this fellow behind us can have a view. But I don't think that they get the typical garden variety head cold that we do, no. Good afternoon. How are you? Small boy there, very large ones over there. Yes, yeah. That's another one of the game drives that's come out from Juma. A chap called Lee, and he runs a course on various wilderness skills out here.
Please. So none of these ones.
I'm just going to move a little bit further forward again. There is another one coming up behind. Here they are not blessed like us to have quiet petrol engines. So there, look at those tusks there. They're beautiful tusks. And Judith in North Carolina, very nice question from you about forest elephant tusks, and do their tusks grow differently? They do, you know, they grow a bit thinner, and they tend to grow more towards the ground. I mean, you do get cows here that have tusks that grow towards the ground, but the forest elephant does tend to have thinner tusks that grow far more towards the ground. Very beautiful are forest elephants, a bit smaller than these ones, a bit rounder almost, but they are very lovely. And thank you, Carla de Wolf. You say you have a 2-year-old who's just loving these elephants. I'm so happy about that, and I hope that you and your young 2-year-old would be able to come out to Africa one day, perhaps when she's a little older than 2. I would suggest 10ish is about the right age.
I think this one's trunk is a bit funny.
Which one?
The one eating
He's
closest
eating
to us.
there. That's a good point. I think you're right. I think it might be damaged. Yes, look at that. Andrew's just spotted a trunk that's chopped off. It's much shorter than normal. Look at that. Shame. But she's managing okay there. That's incredible though, so amazingly adaptable. Alright, we've been with these elephants for a long time. I don't think I'm going to go anywhere just yet, but let's go and find out what Jamie's doing. She's exploring around the place, and we'll pop over to her and I'll see you in a little bit later. In a little while. A little bit later. In a little while.
So guys, welcome back, and what an absolutely magical sighting you've had with those elephants. So I'm sure you're wondering what I've been up to while you were with James, and I have a very, very interesting tale to tell you. So while you were gone, I went to walk where James left Shadow and Sindile last night on the Sunset Safari, and Jandre also hopped out and we kind of scoured the area for what we thought we could find. And Jandre mentioned to me that while they were out last night with Shadow and Sindile, and if you were watching the Sunset Safari, they were out hunting, they were very definitely keen to catch something, that James and Jandre thought they heard an antelope bleat and a kill happen. So I went walking in there and I found something very interesting. I found a bit of a drag mark, and as I followed it, I discovered that, now I have to be very careful because I don't want my evidence to blow away. We've got a proper episode of CSI going on here. As I followed the drag mark, I discovered it had been pulled, whatever it was had been pulled over a tambuti tree. So I've grabbed a piece of the tambuti tree where the kill was dragged over just to show you something. And there you can see all of these little white hairs attached to it. So something was definitely killed there. I could only find leopard tracks in the area, and I can only assume that it was Shadow and Sindile. So a very interesting forensic exercise that was. Now unfortunately, now I can dispose of my evidence. Unfortunately, there are very few places in the bush that I will not walk, but that is one of them. So that drainage line in particular is incredibly thick. You can't see more than 1 or 2 meters ahead of you in parts of it, and I don't particularly want to find Shadow or Sindile trapped in there and disturb them or any other animal, especially given the limited period of time we have to track. So I'm not following through there. I don't think it is particularly sensible, so I'm just looping around to try and see what happened here. So what we can start to build the evidence is that the leopards killed something for sure. There were lots and lots of hyena tracks along this road when I drove it earlier, but no tracks of Shadow and Sindile coming out. But unfortunately there has been a lot of traffic, so I'm not sure if they didn't cross through. Now we know that Shadow is somewhat renowned for her lack of ability to hoist her kills into a tree, so it could be that a hyena came along and stole it. But at the same time, we've also seen that maybe in the last week, we've seen her hoist 2 of her kills. So we can't work on that assumption. So what I have been doing is just driving really, really slowly and carefully and checking all of the sort of larger trees in this area. And I want to just double back to make sure I didn't miss something. What I didn't see along that drag mark was signs of leopard feeding. So usually when they get their prey, they pluck out the fur and then they start to feed, which we've actually been treated to see a couple of times on these live safaris. So we're starting to build up a bit of a story here, but we're missing some of the pieces. However, the other thing that I did find, which might give us a bit of a clue as to what was killed, so that fur is white, it's fairly thick. My guess would be somewhere between a duiker and a steenbok. And I also happened to find, just dig around in my pocket for a moment. So I also happened to find some more little pieces of evidence. So, tiny, tiny pieces of dung in very regular middens. Oopsie. Let me try doing it this way. Let's try and keep it like that. So we've got some tiny, tiny, tiny pieces of dung, and I found them in groups in middens all around the area where I found the drag mark. So we're looking at either a steenbok or a duiker, and the fact that these weren't buried in any way or hidden in any way and were actually put in very obvious middens tells me that it is probably a grey duiker. Of course, this is all supposition. I don't have any sort of solid, conclusive knowledge of what happened last night. It's just a guess, but steenbok bury their dung. There's a lot of duiker activity in that area, So it could be that Shadow and Sindile killed a duiker, or probably Shadow if we're honest. Sindile, as we saw yesterday afternoon, is a little bit lacking in the hunting skills department. But they might have killed something there and then dragged it off to feed. The question now is whether or not the hyenas got to it and whether they dragged it off somewhere. So that is what we're going to set out to see if we can find. But that is the temporary end to my show and tell session, apart from one more thing. So yesterday, James saw that Shadow defecated in the road, and he went back to collect it for the Panthera DNA samples that we are helping to contribute to, which is absolutely wonderful. Now, James and I tend to have differing personalities in that I tend to be a little bit messy, and James tends to be very neat. So there's a lot of banter between us in terms of my mess versus his neatness. But I would just like to point out this little piece of mess that he left in the car for me to find, and I did grab it. Ooh, and it does smell. And this is apparently the glove that James was using to collect the leopard scat sample. So I'm going to remind him of that later. I'm going to leave that there for now, and I'm going to actually send you back across to the culprit. I'm sure you will enjoy some time spent with the Ellies while I try and untangle the mystery of Shadow and Sindile and the drag mark, and I will catch up with you a little bit later.
Oh man, he's coming back. Hello everybody, welcome back to Jiga. The reason I was groaning was not because Jamie is besmirching my name, as I have messed Wendy in my quest for science, but it was because that lilac-breasted roller, which was sat so close to us, has now moved. Nasty little fellow that he is. Now, for those of you perhaps wondering what on earth that sort of box with the light in front of it was, WildEarth has a number of cameras around the world in wildlife hotspots, one of which is this very waterhole, and you can see why. We've had a rather magnificent afternoon so far with them, and it's live all the time. So if you go to wildearth.tv and click on the Juma Cam, I think it's called the Juma Cam, you'll get a nice view of this waterhole all the time, 24/7. So if you happen to be an insomniac, or perhaps you're just bored stiff at work, I don't blame you. If you're not doing this job, or perhaps if you're an astronaut, you wouldn't want to be watching WildEarth live. But if you're not, if you happen to be in the accounts department of a large company, or trying to draft some complicated legal document, log on to that little camera, and it will provide you with a little taste of Africa throughout your day. Just going to go a little bit forward. The elephants are still feeding very gently here in this greenery. I'm hoping they're going to pop over the wall at some stage to have a drink, but if they don't, we'll stay with them for a little bit longer, and then maybe we'll press on and see what else we can see. I've certainly heard nothing else on the radio regarding large hairy cats, and I think our best bet of large hairy cats this afternoon is going to be with the particularly unlarge and unhairy cat that is Jamie Patterson. Sorry, I knew the angle is going to be a little bit awkward. Look at the little one coming up to the big bull there. It's quite sweet. while we're watching these elephants having a little eat and hoping they're going to go and have a water, what we're going to do is just answer a lovely question from Jean in North Carolina. Sorry, not Jean. Hang on one second. Jean, you did send through a question and you want to know about the lilac-breasted roller feathers, and have I found any for our Hawaiian viewers who were going to send me some wonderful Hawaiian coffee. No, the answer is no, I have not found any yet. I am looking madly. I did see Jamie with one the other day. I tried to arrest it from her, but she got a little upset, so I had to leave it with her. So Jamie's got one, but I'm still looking for 2 lilac-breasted roller feathers to send to Hawaii so that I might get some Hawaiian coffee. Delicious. And then Jean, at least not Jean, Donna, interesting question about water, and does it start to smell bad? Absolutely, it does start to smell bad as it gets lower. Not bad, but it does start to smell a bit murky and mucky, a bit like the mud. So if you've ever been in some dirty river mud, that's basically what it starts to smell like. Thanks for that, Donna. My legs certainly smell pretty rank after I'd been trying to catch the catfish the other day. I think it just smells bad because of perhaps some rotting vegetation. Obviously the buffalo and various other animals leave their dung in it, and so it just becomes fairly unclean and full of bacteria. Certainly not something I would drink. And there's a cow with much longer tusks, or you can see the different shape of the tusks. The tusks are thinner and they point towards the ground. We had a question about forest elephants, and that's pretty similar to what a forest elephant's tusks would look like. And that's a cow, of course. And you can see very nicely there, actually. Sorry, Andrew, can you get in on those tusks again? The right tusk is definitely shorter than the left tusk. It's also worn, and she's probably, there is a bit of a, not a theory, but there's a thought that elephants become right or left tusked, like you and I are right or left-handed, and you can see quite clearly there that one tusk is used probably more than the other. So she's a right tusked cow. Very nice question coming through here about eating and why we watch them eating different kinds of plants. Nice question from Louise, who would like to know, do baby elephants learn to eat different kinds of plants, or do they know instinctively what kind of plants to eat? Unquestionably, they learn from their parents. It's very interesting to watch. They learn from a young age different plants to eat. I'm sure taste has got something to do with it, but I suspect that there is a form of medicinal plant use that elephants employ, and they would learn that definitely from their parents. And I heard a lovely example the other day of not so much plant eating, but how an old bull came along and he found a patch of urine that a cow had sprayed, and he put his trunk in it and smelt it and put his trunk in his mouth, and he put his trunk in it and smelt it and put his trunk in his mouth, because that's how they test for reproductive status. And there was a young bull watching him do it, and he watched for a long time, and eventually his trunk into the urine and did that. And that's basically definitely how they learn, and certainly how they learn where water is, and how they learn where the good feeding places. Elephants do live beyond breeding age, and very few animals do that, and only in the animals where the old are a repository of knowledge does that tend to happen. And of course the older elephants most certainly are a repository of knowledge to the younger ones. Just like us, really. Andrew, are you a repository of knowledge?
True that.
There we go. Not convinced myself, but you know. Right. Don't want to disturb them, A, and B, I quite want them to come and have a drink. We can try a different angle. You can just want to disturb them, A, and B, I quite want them to come and have a drink. We can try a different angle. You can just see the light is now starting to soften. You can just see the light is now starting to soften. She hung around for, I think she hung around for about 4 days almost. Certainly it took the leopard about 2 days to find the carcass, and then the mother still hung around for a long time after that. So I suppose you could say that there was a form of mourning. It's not as obvious as with elephants, but certainly it could be considered a form of mourning. So no tracks of leopards or lions at this stage. Just going to stop up here. I can hear some alarm calling. Can you hear that, Andrew?
Yeah.
That is the alarm calling of the infamous chin-spotted batis. There he is. You see him there?
Yeah.
That is a chin spot batis, and they're alarming at something. Could be a snake. It could be a mongoose. It could be a lion. It could be a leopard. Let's just have a quick listen. Mostly they alarm call it snakes. Beautiful shot. We'll just have one more look at this chap, and then I will just go off on foot and have a look around here and see if there isn't anything worth bringing you back for. And while I do that, we'll go across to Jamie, and Jamie is with, I think, a muddy bovid and an attendant ave. We'll see you just now.
So guys, welcome back, and as we take this moment to really look at the beauty of these oxpeckers, I just want to double check what's happening on the Game Drive channel. I just heard a message about tracks, so I just want to listen carefully to what's happening there. And apparently there's plenty of competition for one of the best tick catching spots. And that is a particular area on the buffalo where obviously the skin is a little bit thinner than the rest of it. So they're just struggling to get in there and get some of the really, really large ticks. And incredibly helpful birds for these buffalo. They can eat, any one of these birds can eat up to 1,000 ticks in a day. So They can be very, very helpful in ridding them of those horrible parasites. You can see this old bull's also been rolling in mud. We are currently sitting at Red Dam in Arethusa, and there's not very much left of it apart from a couple of muddy pools that these buffalo have probably been wallowing in, or definitely been wallowing in. And a combination of mud skin treatment and oxpecker action is a great way of treating a tick problem. Sorry guys, just listening to the Game Drive channel again. Sorry guys, that was a long message, but it was a very, very interesting one. And I just want to check exactly what they were talking about. So it sounds like it is right on our western boundary, so the western boundary of Arethusa, but the guides have picked up 2 sets of tracks and 2 sets of male leopard tracks. Their guess is Tingana and the Anderson male. And for some of the regular viewers, you will know that a couple of, maybe a week or so, a bit more than that ago, Scott had them on a sunset safari, growling and vocalizing at each other in a very, very similar area to where they've picked up their tracks now. Unfortunately, it is just across our western boundary, but by the sound of it, the tracks are looking like their general direction is east, which is positive news for us because it gives us a good direction to start looking for them in. And who knows, we might be in for some exciting times ahead. And for those of you who don't know exactly what I'm talking about, maybe you've joined us for the first time, Tingana is one of the large dominant male leopards in this area. He is somewhere around 9 years old, and recently he's been challenged by the Anderson male, who has moved in from the west and is starting to look at coming into Tingana's territory and pushing him a little bit. And they were seen together with Scott, and they were seen together for about a day, just growling at each other. So this could be possibly a very, very exciting sunset safari if they have moved to the east. I'm going to start heading in that direction. So, very, very exciting news coming from the Game Drive channel, which I am just still trying to listen to. There's a lot of guides coordinating search efforts around there. So what I'm going to do to try and help them out is just move along some of the eastern roads that I can, that are on our boundary, and just check around for him there, see if we can pick up any tracks. But exciting times, and over the last 2 days we had conflict between the Birmingham boys, the big coalition of male lions, with the Matimba male lions. So possibly we're going to get some conflict here between, or at least some interaction between Tingana and the Anderson male. So I'm very curious to follow up. I'm going to keep trying to listen to the updates on this radio, and in the meantime I'm going to start heading across in that direction. So we're going to start driving into the sun. We're going to go into quite a nice drainage line. Sorry, that go away bird started very suddenly. And he's stopped calling now, so whatever it was not too serious. Okay. So let's see what we can see. I'm going to start driving through quite a thick drainage line, but it is a really, really nice road, and it puts us, we pop out right at where the Nkuhumas killed that buffalo fairly recently And I'm quite happy with the way I'm starting to get to know the roads of Arethusa. It certainly helps that we've had a couple of awesome sightings here. So guys, at this point, they still haven't found the leopards yet. They've just found the tracks and they are trying to follow up. Now, I've just heard one of the guides say that it was driven over by a car, so they're just sort of spreading out and searching. And I don't want to work in the same areas as they're working in, but let's start moving through this drainage line for a bit, and I'll start checking. You can come along with me and check the other roads, and then once I get a little bit closer, then I'll jump on the Game Drive channel and let the other guides know that I'm on my way to this area. Just listening to the alarm calls of the various birds. Don't think that go-away bird sounds too frantic. I'm just going through a dip here, so let's get through before we carry on discussing those alarm calls. So guys, I was talking a little bit about the alarm calls of that grey go-away bird, and I was just saying I don't think that it's too serious. In fact, I think it might be just communication between the other go-away birds, or with the other go-away birds. And Tim would actually like to know how you tell the difference between bird alarm calls and then just their general communication with each other. And for some of them, there is a very distinct difference between their call or their normal song and their alarm calls. And for others, it's very similar. So for the go-away bird, they can call to communicate to each other in the same way that they might alarm call. But there is a very, very different tone to it. So they have quite an alarmed feeling to the way that sounds. It's very sharp, it's very sudden, and it's very loud. And that's really difficult for me to explain because it's something that I've picked up over time rather than knowing exactly what it is that makes the difference. The most important thing to listen out for when you're listening to really serious alarm calls, and I'm actually going to stop because he's still calling and I want to just listen while I talk. The most important thing to listen for in terms of alarm calls is whether or not there are other species calling as well at the same time. And with a lot of bird species, once one starts, the others will actually head across to that area and have a look at what they're shouting at, because it's quite important. You might need to know that you are on alert, but it doesn't help you if you don't know which direction or what you need to be on the alert for. So alarm calls will often trigger other alarm calls from different species. And if you get lots and lots of individuals calling along with lots of different species, then you can start to know that they are responding to something that is a threat rather than anything else. And it does just come down to experience. I've heard go-away birds calling before, as these two are to each other, and I don't think it's a serious alarm call, because although they are doing it fairly regularly, so I could be wrong. I'll just be quiet so you can hear. And I think I've changed my mind about which direction I want to go in. I'm going to actually turn around and just double check on those alarm calls. Now, Tim, I'm not hearing any other alarm calls of any other animals, and as I said, very often other animals and other birds will come and investigate. So I'm not entirely certain that these three weren't just communicating with each other. So there's no definite answer, it just comes in terms of experience. And the fact that everything has gone quiet leads me to think that there isn't actually a serious threat, or if it was a threat, it could have been something like a bird of prey that has flown past. With a leopard or something, you find that they tend to shout repeatedly. You get multiple species shouting, and they do it in a very panicked tone. For example, the other day I heard the grey go-away bird starting, and immediately, and I can't put my finger on exactly what it was, I knew that there was something there, and then the hornbills started going and the squirrels started going, and we followed them in and almost instantly found a spotted eagle owl. So you can tell it takes some time just listening and concentrating on what's happening around them. The fact that these guys have gone quiet makes me think that it's nothing too serious, and I'm going to continue on my original path. But just a very interesting question about the various nature of alarm calls. I'm just going to listen again to the Game Drive channel, make sure that I'm not missing anything happening as we make our way through a very, very beautiful area and a beautiful drainage line. You can see how nice and sandy it is. It's one of my favorite roads on Arethusa so far that I've discovered. So we'll head in this direction. Just making sure my diff lock is on, because this is exactly where I was when I got stuck with Brian, but in a slightly different context. We were trying to follow up on those playing lionesses, so we were at a different angle to the one we're at now. Here we go, made it through unscathed. So guys, I'm going to send you back across to James, who is driving through Djuma just to see what he can find. And I'm just going to hop onto the radio channel and get some updates from that side.
Hello everybody, welcome back to Giga. And now the reason you have come back to us so fast is that the irascible and inimitable and highly enthusiastic Brent Leo Smith has managed to find Shadow. Now whether we'll be, we're not going there because we're miles away. Jamie is hieing her way at great speed back there to see if she can get into the area. I don't want to give you false hope, it is very thick. I think it's pretty much where we had her yesterday. So it's very thick, but with any luck, Brent and Jamie will be able to get in there, and you will be blessed with a sunset sighting of Shadow and her cub. So that's good news. Bad news is you've got to deal with me for the next little while Jamie gets into the sighting. And we are on the far northeastern section, heading towards Biffles Hook Dam, where our great friend Bob, the Bachelor of Biffles Hook, managed to make a reappearance this morning, which was very exciting. I was most pleased about that. So we're going to go and see if he's spent the whole day there, and probably watch the sun go down gently over the wall and enjoy the peace of this wonderful African dusk that is about to take place. Francolins on the road, little crested francolins. We'll see them about to fly off now. Run, 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 little birds. There we go. Get off, go on. The cliche, why fly, why run when you can fly, comes to mind. It really is turning into a very stunning afternoon. Oh, when last you saw, we had some alarm calls from chin spot batises, and I'm afraid we didn't come up with anything. I did walk around the area for a while, but there weren't any chin spot batises. There wasn't anything that they were alarming at. Oh dear. So a couple of questions here from Tom and Barbara. Tom, you're in the Netherlands, and Barbara, you're in Milwaukee. While I remove this tree, this obstacle placed by a recalcitrant elephant bull, we do see snakes on drive quite often, but not so much in the winter time. Because thanks for your help, Andrew. You just chill out there. Because of course most of them are hiding away from the cold and the dry.
Strong man.
Yeah. In summer we tend to see them a bit more, but you know, they do try and avoid people a lot, and they avoid vibrations made by cars and vibrations made by people on foot, so we don't see them a huge amount. And then Tom, you want to know basically, do any of the snakes here eat other snakes? And Tom, they do, you know. There's a really nice example of it, and that's the Mozambique spitting cobra. Well, in fact, a couple of cobra species will eat puff adders, and a puff adder, if you don't know, is like I suppose the most obvious North American example would be a rattlesnake. It's a similar kind of a snake, an adder with a cytotoxic venom, and the cobra has a neurotoxic venom which will paralyze most things, and they bite the puff adder, and it's, I mean, I've seen amazing video footage of it. The puff adder goes into these horrific sort of convulsions before dying, while the cobra lurks around in the background waiting, and eventually the cobra will then swallow the puff adder. So yeah, it does happen. Good question, thanks Tom. Oh, I'm not plugged in. Yes, I am. Sure. We're just approaching Biffles Hook now. While we're driving along to Biffles Hook Dam, I've been asked a very difficult one. Genevieve, New York, nice question. What animals do I feel have had to adapt the most or evolved the most since human beings have been around? Well, Genevieve, we've been around for the last 100,000 years or so in our current form. So let's rather use the term adapt rather than evolve, because oh, there's an elephant. Probably been drinking at Biffleshoek Dam. So we'll just have a quick look at this elephant. I'm not going to hang around with him because we've spent an enormous amount of time with elephants today. So that's an elephant there, and I love the way the golden light of sort of bounces off those last leaves, sitting on a tree wisteria. All right, well, let's carry on quickly because I want to get to the water hole. No disrespect to you, elephant. Thank you for showing your face. Genevieve, so what animal has basically had to adapt most to human encroachment or human beings being around? I don't know. You know, we've driven quite a few extinct, so some have definitely not managed to adapt. I think maybe the best way to answer that is to say that some animals are more adaptable than others. So a leopard is a good example of a cat that isn't necessarily endangered and can survive in places that possibly it didn't know it could. So it'll survive on farmland, it'll survive close by to different human habitations where many wild animals are unable to do that. And a great example we chatted about today was the cheetah and the leopard. Cheetah won't survive around humans. They struggle to breed in the face of disturbance, and they have a very specialized way of eating. Leopard, completely the opposite. They'll very comfortably breed with disturbance around them. They eat anything they can find, and they're just really kind of good adapters. So I wonder if leopard isn't the best example of an animal that has adapted to being around human beings. I mean, of course, something like a domestic dog would be a good example. You could almost say that a wolf, which was the ancestor of the domestic dog, has managed to adapt the best to human habitation, but I think that's us more than them. Now, Andrew, you didn't see old Bob today, did you? You know what? He's not here. I don't believe it. Where would he have gone? We'll just go around the corner here so that you can see the marvelousness of the setting sun. There we go. I'm afraid the hippopotamus is not here. So everybody, that's very unusual, because a hippo won't normally move during the day, and it was quite a warm day. I'm very confused as to why he wouldn't be here. So we'll just watch quietly now as the day breathes out and we do the same, and the sun slowly sets. You can hear beautiful sounds of the Cape turtle dove or ring-necked dove going. Just echoing through the trees. Lovely smells all around, including that of Andrew's flaming lip gloss, which seems to have a very powerful smell. It's not too bad there. Vanilla, Andrew, correct? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, that does bring a glow to the heart to see a scene like that. Here where the weavers will come and enjoy the summer. They'll hang their nests there. Lovely time in spring when the weavers are building. Hi Sarah, we've had a couple of lovely questions from you over the last few weeks I think you're in Ohio. Sarah, you're 17 and you want to know where do the weavers migrate to. Sarah, they don't migrate, they just lose that yellow colouring and they don't live in the nests anymore. So they're all around here and they look very drab and brown and they're just not much to look at this time of the year. But they're all around, and now very shortly they'll start to get their spring colours, their bright yellow colours. And in case of the red-headed weaver, what will the red-headed weaver get, Andrew?
A red head.
A red head, there we go. He's quite clever. And the red-billed buffalo weavers don't change, but they'll come back to the nests and probably spend a bit more time in them now during the summer as they lay their eggs, because all the weavers lay their eggs during the summertime because it's much easier for them to find food for the chicks. And Andrew's just going to show you some crested francolins, which are enjoying the last of the light before they go up into the trees to roost. Beautiful little birds, calling, pecking away. And of course they don't only eat things like seeds. They're looking for stones that are of appropriate size to put in their gizzards. And the gizzard, of course, is the forestomach, or the front stomach in a bird, and it helps them to, sorry, I think it's actually the back stomach. It helps them to grind up the food because they don't have teeth. Look at this little chap. There's one very close behind us here. Beautiful evening here. So these little francolins will all be part of the same covey. And a covey is a group of these ground-dwelling birds. I think it's a hunting term, but it's certainly not a hunting term here. It's found one of the last repositories of little bits of seed in the dry season. What else can you hear, Andrew? A couple of robins calling. And the sun has finally set. We'll just have a little bit more of a listen. It sounds to me like Jamie's been successful. So I'm not going to move just yet. I'm just going to wait here and see if we don't get an update on it, and then we'll send you straight across to her. I think she's just trying to get into the area. A couple of hornbills, Andrew's favourite, calling off to the side. Robins. Crested franklin's calling now. Alright, well let's just meander along and see what else we can see in the interim. What a beautiful place to sit. I could sit here for hours. Very confused as to what's happened to my friend Bob. That. Some elephants calling there. There they come. We're just coming down to drink. And while they come down to drink, I'm going to hand you straight over to the long-suffering and hard-trying Jamie, who's managed to get into the leopard sighting. Good for her. And we'll see you just now. Enjoy the leopard.
So guys, welcome back. And can you believe it? right in this thick block, probably about 10 meters or so, where I picked up the evidence of that Dacre kill, is Shadow and Sindile. Now, at the moment, Shadow is off to our right, tucked in this thick block, although she does seem to be moving around, and she's just very kindly defecated for us. So in keeping with today's theme, at some point I will be going to collect some of that for our Panthera, to help out with the Panthera research. And I'm not sure how clearly we can see her through there. There she's moving. I can also hear Sindile moving around in the block. And yes, we definitely called it right. It was a Dacre kill, although there is not much left of it apparently. So we have a huge thank you to say to Brent, who came walking and followed up on the drag mark in this block, and apparently found them almost immediately, straight from where I'd left off with the drag mark, and had a little bit of a growl from both of them. So at least we got to find them, and our forensic analysis of the whole situation turned out to be exactly correct. They did indeed kill the Dacre. It's just that they didn't drag it too far at all. They've just dragged it into this block here. I'm just going to hop on the Game Drive channel quickly. There's somebody trying to, I think there's somebody trying to get hold of. Just want to see if there's somebody trying to find their way in here, because unless you know where we are, you are definitely not going to see us. So awesome stuff. What a cool way to start a story for the Sunset Safari and then finish it with Shadow and Sindile. Granted, it is in a very thick area, but at least we know that they are here. So very exciting. And good to know that our forensic guesswork was in fact correct. And I think she might have a spot of diarrhea. She's actually defecated in 3 different places, and that could just be from the richness of the Dacre kill. And isn't that amazing that yesterday you were watching them on the Sunset Safari with their Dacre up in a tree just about 2 kilometers from here, and then, oh no, sorry, that was 2 days ago, and then yesterday afternoon you were watching them with James hunting right in this area, and now we have the conclusion to that story, which is that they've killed again and managed to eat a Dacre. So Shadow proving to be a very successful mother and keeping Sindile very well fed.
She just phlegm and grimaced.
She's phlegm and grimacing there, that face that she's pulling. Now Brent tells me that he did find male leopard tracks in this area as well, which is also very interesting. He said they were fresh, but they've moved out of this block, so who knows, it could be Tingana. And just an update on that side, they are still following up with the tracks, but unfortunately it looks as though the tracks are moving further west, so not towards our side of the boundary. And that phlegm and grimace that she did as she pulled the scent into her nostrils, the reason that I suspect it might be a male is that's very often a reproductive sort of sensory action. So they smell the urine of other males or females just to get an idea of their reproductive status. And Heather from Maryland, you wanted to know when Shadow will have another cub. And just for those of you, to update those of you who might be joining us for the first time, this is Shadow. She is a female leopard. I think she's somewhere in the region of 6 or 7 years old. She might be a little bit older. And she has a 1-year-old or close to 1-year-old cub called Sindile, who is tucked away. I can hear him crunching, but I'm going to struggle to get a visual of him just at the moment. But he's tucked away, off crunching away. So Heather, the answer to your question in terms of when she'll next have a cub is probably over a year away, probably a 1.5 to 2 years before she has her next set of cubs. She could go I'd say probably in about a year she will start to mate again. Sindile will, over the next few months, from 6 months to about a year, will start moving away and becoming independent, and then she will start coming back into estrus and have her cubs. And that very much is dependent on the circumstances. And very often it is a tough life for these leopards out here. It could be that she has cubs that we will never get to see, just because the mortality rate for young cubs is so high. So guys, while I reposition and try to get you to see Sindile and what is left of that Dacre carcass, I also need to hop on the radio to call some stations in. I'm going to send you back across to James, who has some ellies at Buffelshoek Dam, and I will catch up with you a little bit later.
Don't forget the delay. Hello everybody, just a quick, we thought we'd better bring you quickly back to Jigga and Buffelshoek Waterhole, where these elephants are forming a wonderful reflection as they drink quietly from the Buffelshoek Dam. There are just 4 of them, 2 there and 2 off to the left, and they don't seem to be speaking to each other, the 2 cows. You heard them shouting at each other as they came down. We're not sure what the upheaval is, but they certainly don't seem to be in each other's good books. But what a beautiful scene this is. Right, well that's the elephant's little cameo. While you look at the magnificent shadow and Sindile, we'll send you back there and enjoy the rest of the shadow sighting. Wonderful leopard that she is.
So guys, welcome back. I'm just trying to get us a little bit of a visual of Sindile. He is playing around with the Dacre carcass in this block, and if I somewhat riskily, good. Hello tree. Why, thank you for that smack in the face. Is that okay for you, Jandre? Or maybe a little bit forward.
Quick, but no, we can see him.
Okay, we can see him. So you can see him playing a little bit with the Dacre carcass, and you can see how incredibly thick this drainage line is. I think it's caught on the tree, on the knobthorn, by the skin, and he is trying to pull it off. So not the best visual in the world, but still interesting. And I cannot get over how close they were to where I first saw that drag mark. I must have been 20 meters away from them at that point. And obviously they felt comfortable enough at that distance not to let me know where they were by growling. I'm just going to, because I did do a little bit of a Ferrari safari back here, and I'm fairly certain that my core body temperature has dropped by at least 2 degrees. So I just want to layer up quickly while I have an opportunity. My collection of things. And I'm not sure exactly how clearly you guys are seeing him at the moment. Obviously, I'm driving on a vehicle that doesn't have a monitor at the moment, and my view is largely obstructed by the guarri bush. see him tugging and desperately trying to get that duiker. I think he's kind of playing with it, to be honest. I'm going to make sure my spotlight is... Got it. Oh, and up he goes into some really seriously thick bush up there, so might struggle to get through this particular branch. Let me try and reposition. I can still see him, so maybe we can try and get through here. I'm going to just reverse a little bit and then drive around. Jean-Andre, I'm afraid you might have some branches to contend with. It is going to be very noisy, guys, so I do apologize for that in advance. Let's see if we can see him. He is being very cute. I'm attempting to save Jean-Andre and myself from imminent destruction. You okay there? Okay, so I'm not sure how our visual's going to be from here. He is trying to practice hoisting, I think. Jean-Andre, how's your view from there? Shall I try and move forward a little bit, because we have got, you can see that very, very full belly. Shadow is definitely doing an excellent job of feeding this little boy at the moment. And those instincts are coming into play. He has hoisted his kill. Just going to shift back ever so slightly. Let's try get a little bit of it. Now we must try and stay here. So some interesting maneuvering happening, but I think we've found our best position for now. And I think he's found his best position for now. He's managed to hoist his kill, or his mother's kill, we don't know for sure, up into the tree. Showing that characteristic leopard ability and agility as he moves through these trees and straight back where he came from. So, guys, as we try and follow him back through those thick bushes, and I try not to sort of decapitate either Jean-Andre or myself, I'm going to send you back across to James, and I'm going to try and find you a nice view of what he's up to. I'll be back with you in just a few moments.
Hello, welcome back. Jamie's just repositioning her car, as I'm sure she told you, and I'm driving at a great speed, not because of anything particularly exciting animal-wise, but there's just such a lovely view of the mountains, and there's a very beautiful viewpoint up here that I want to go to quickly, just before you go back to the leopard. Had quite a good day after all, especially after this morning, which was a bit quiet. Lovely pale winter sky. Nearly there. Don't spill your drink. Couple of impala up ahead. Hello impalas. while we Rhonda in Kentucky, you say you watched my interview on a little wildlife TV program in South Africa called 50/50, and I spoke about my book. Rhonda, and your question was not so much about the substance of my interview, but indeed about what has happened to my long curly dark hair. Rhonda, I'm afraid what happened to my long curly dark hair is what happens to most men's long dark curly hair when they get to around about my age. The scourge of male pattern baldness, which is not uncommon in my family, I'm afraid took it all away, and so I now chop it off very short and close to the scalp. Thank you, Rhonda. Nothing more I can say about that. Andrew, get the camera off my face and put it on the mountains. So there's the beautiful Drakensberg escarpment, and it's a very subtle coloured sky tonight, don't you think?
Yeah, it's wonderful.
And I'm just going to I think I might take a picture, Andrew, with my little camera. You might put it on the tripod. And those mountains, as I've said to you before, stretch some 1,000 kilometers down the escarpment of South Africa. The highest point is a point called Thaba Ntlenyana. Oh, Andrew, do not try and track a bat, you will make people sick. That is a bat that Andrew was trying to track vigorously there with the camera. Is it a bat or is it a bird?
I think it's a bat.
It's a bat. And Thaba Ntlenyana is about 2,800 meters above sea level, which, as world mountains go, is not particularly high. It's not going to compete with the Himalayas or anything in the Andes, or indeed anything in the Alps. But it's very beautiful. Not that I've been there. Andrew, have you been there?
You're ruining my shot, James.
I'm sorry. I'm trying to demonstrate my photographic skill to our audience while Jamie repositions her car. Now, everybody, I'm an extremely amateur photographer, and I do like to take landscapes, which only I ever like to look at. My parents roll their eyes whenever I say, do you want to see my latest pictures? But I will show you what I'm going to do now. Andrew, if you could position your lens on my display screen. And what I'm going to do is try and use that tree as the frame for my picture, using the rule of thirds. And what that means, everybody, if you happen to be a photographer, or you're more professional than me, or less professional than me, which is hard to imagine, basically what we're going to do is to create an image where the horizon is not halfway across, but indeed 1/3 of the way up or 1/3 of the way down, in this case on the way down. And we're going to change the exposure from 8 seconds down to about 2. What do you think, Andrew?
Looking good.
2 seconds. And then we're going to push go and see what happens. Now it is taking the photograph. Now, as you can see, it is busy. And there is my magnificent photograph, which I will enjoy on my own, no doubt, because no one in my family will want to look at it. I'll just take one more.
Don't cut the tree off on the left.
Oh, sorry. On the left or the right? The left. I think we want that one there. Okay. Andrew's better at this than I am. Okay, happy? Or do you think we need both trees? Ah, there we go. Right, there we go. Here we go. Right, so there is my picture, amateur as it was. We're going to take you back to Jamie now, who's with something a lot more entertaining than my photographic skills. I'll see you just a little bit later.
So guys, welcome back, and you'll be happy to know that both Jandre and myself survived a return trip through the trees to try and get another visual of these leopards. Now I'm not sure where Shadow has gone. That looks to be Sindile, who's feeling a little bit tired and exhausted after his Dacre hoisting efforts. So Sindile is an only cub. I'm not sure if there were others in his litter that were killed, but at the moment he is the only cub that his mother has. And Diane from Texas would like to know if there's any kind of social difference or the way that they are raised, if it is a solitary cub rather than having two or three litter mates to grow up with and to learn from each other. And is there any difference in the way that they then approach independence? Are they more dependent on mom? Are they less dependent on mom? And a really, really good question, and one that I've actually never really thought about before, because certainly having a friend to play with or a sibling to play with is a great way of honing your hunting skills. And you'll see it with all of the sort of baby big cats. They tend to play and they go straight for some of the techniques that they're going to use in real life in terms of hunting and catching things. They practice the grip on the neck and so on. So I wonder if there is any difference. I wouldn't think that it is enormous.
Magnificent elephant bulls and some wonderful low-felt wildlife. Thank you for a great day. Thank you to Andrew on camera and to all the technical people in the final control, Tara and Louise. And I'm going to hand you straight back to Jamie and the wonderful leopards. And a big thank you, of course, to Brent for finding the leopard. We'll see you in the morning. Thank you very much and good night.
So guys, welcome back, and just as we draw to the close of this particular sunset safari, what an amazing sunset safari it has been. And we followed this story from basically start to finish, when you saw Shadow and Sindile hunting around in this block with James and hearing what might have been a kill, to then following up. I know Brent was looking for them this morning, and then following up this afternoon, finding that drag mark, looking at it, weighing up all the evidence, trying to figure out exactly where they'd been, and then of course with actually finding them and seeing them and really getting to know that the conclusions that we drew from what evidence we had were in fact correct. They had a Dacre kill. They were just in this thick block, exactly in the direction I was walking in. So really, really cool that all of the evidence tied together. And then great to see Sindile playing and starting to hoist his kills. And isn't it so cool that we get to follow these stories? It's one of the major advantages of these live safaris. So if you are joining us for the first time, you should stick around with us and watch as many as you can, because you do get to follow individual stories as and when they happen. So we haven't got the best view of them. They are in the thick bush, but Sindile is being playful and dragging that Dacre carcass up and down and around and getting it caught in thorns. So a really, really successful end to the afternoon, and one that I feel has gone very well. So, as always, a big thank you to Jandre for his fantastic camera work and for surviving the thorn attacks as we tried to make our way in here. And a big thank you to Tara and to Lou in FC, and as always our tech genius Eugene. And a big thank you to all of you guys, the viewers, because it really makes this whole thing worthwhile, being able to share these moments and these stories with you. So wherever you are in the world, have a fantastic day or night, and we will see you tomorrow for the sunrise safari. Cheers guys.